Welcome to our first episode of Facts Check. Now, it's interesting to me that our first guest on our first podcast would be David Zwirner, because David, I think you recall that you are subscriber #1 to the original Baer Facts. So I thought it would be kind of sweet to have you as guest #1 on this show.
When was that? When was #1? When was the Baer Facts started?
1994. So
wow, okay, so
and we both have our hair, so I think that's pretty good.
Yeah, but both have gray hair, so there
but
you
gray,
go.
gray
Exactly.
beats no hair.
Exactly.
So welcome as guest #1.
Thank you very much. I'm honored.
So let's get right to it. There's a lot of attention that's paid in the press to mega galleries. And it occurred to me, no one ever speaks to the mega galleries about what that might mean and who they are and what they do. So you're one of generally considered 4, Pace, Gagosian, Hauserwerth, David Zwirner Gallery to be mega. What do you think when you hear that term?
So, really great question, if I may say so. Nobody's ever asked that in many interviews. I hate the terminology, right? I think it conjures up all the wrong things. It conjures up humongous, vast, unedited, multiplex. And really, if it comes down to it, you know, it is sort of a signifier of a certain reality. Let's say 200 plus employees, 100,000 plus square feet of gallery. You know, many artists, of course, and maybe galleries in 3 continents, right? That's sort of the common denominator, right? Other than that, I feel the galleries that are bulked together as mega galleries are very, very different entities, right? And it's very hard. I feel it's been difficult for the audience to distinguish sometimes. And I've also noticed that sometimes I get held responsible for the sins of my other mega galleries, right? They do something, next thing people say, all mega galleries do that, right? But mostly I find it difficult because it doesn't really say or explain what we're actually doing and how the gallery has evolved, right? To just say the gallery's gotten bigger is a simplification. And it doesn't account for all the things that we ultimately added along the way to be a much more productive gallery in the service of our artists, right? Artists are first. We are an artist-centric gallery. That's what I can say about this mega gallery, and I'm really proud of that, right? And what we've been trying to do with growth, we've been trying to tell an ever more compelling story and a richer story about what our artists are doing, right? So needless to say, we're publishing books. We're creating, you know, scholarship and when we publish books. Lately, we started to do podcasts, just like you. And that's a fantastic free medium. They're free, just like the exhibitions that we do in the gallery, right? We're taking our exhibitions online. We hear from the artists. We get you into the studio with the new studio features. So those are all things that we do that are not, when you say mega gallery, we don't touch on any of that except the scale, right? I feel that we are really kind of morphing into it's like a cultural platform, right? We're really kind of a much richer kind of mouthpiece for the artists that have signed on and that you know, that we are working really hard to serve. Does it answer your question?
It's a start. Most people seem to think it's a way to cannibalize the young galleries, and I don't think that's been your desire or methodology. In fact, I think you've sort of collaborated with some of the young galleries over time.
You know, I was asked this question about large galleries, small galleries, and if I'm honest, I feel much more of a kinship to smaller galleries that are really artist-centric and artist-driven, right? And you know, to that point, being a cultural platform, what we did last year when things were really locked down and shut down, we invited younger galleries onto our digital outreach, and we called that platform. And also the people that work inside the gallery, the people that you know, Angela, Bella, Hannah, Christine, you know, people that have been with the gallery for a long time, they're so artist-centric. They're really running mini galleries within the gallery. They've been working with the same artist for 20 years.
Do you find that 25 years later, approximately since you opened your gallery, that you're actually able to spend more time with the artists and the collectors than you did at the beginning when you had to watch what's the press really saying, is the wall being painted, that the mega dealers are actually get the reputation of spending no time with the artists, but in fact they're able to spend more time, personally the owners of the galleries, because they don't have to focus on all the other administrative duties?
So, no. That's
Too
not
bad.
true. I wish that was true. You know, what's been keeping me busy has been growing the gallery, right? Again, trying to figure out how we can reach new audiences for the artists in the States. And that's been a full-time job, and it actually has taxed my time with clients and with artists. But again, having colleagues in the gallery that have done artist management for so long and so successfully and so wholeheartedly, I feel that I have the luxury of kind of being out of touch for a few months with an artist and then going back in, knowing exactly what's going on and having a meaningful conversation. We have a beautiful little apartment in New York that we call the artist apartment, and that happens to be in my townhouse. So when artists come through, we very often have the guests right with us. Actually happens next week. So I have a very lovely personal relationship with almost everyone in the gallery, but I wish I had more time. I don't.
It was interesting. I read an interesting interview in the Canvas, and a very important dealer said, I'm not a mega gallery, and then they talked about representing 75 artists. So it's like, that seemed a little bit mega-ish, and they have several branches. So maybe we should stop using the term?
I don't know who came up with it. I think it was Carol Vogel, maybe. You know, I think she kind of started a long time ago. I really, you know, at first you feel like you're part of an exclusive club, but then I feel it's really, it's a very unnuanced term, and I like I said, it never felt comfortable.
Well, we're glad you actually spoke about it, because as I said, no one ever does. Now, switching gears a little bit, certainly the last year of political change in America, and the art world has done a very good job of looking at diversity by artists, but not such a good job of looking at inclusion, diversity in a culture of cancel culture in terms of staffing. It was interesting, your move to create a new space that was run by people of color, and it was announced. Where does that stand? What was your thinking? How are we able to sort of go forward in a time where it's important to do more than just Blackout Tuesday?
So, super complicated subject matter, right? For me, it all started, I want to say, 6, 7 years ago when Chris Feely came to the gallery and kind of looked at me and said, you know, David, tell me, how come there are not more people in your gallery working here that look like me? Just like sort of offhand, like an aside. And I was like, you know, I was taken aback. And, you know, you might remember, or yes, you remember, I came to New York as a jazz musician. So I was, you know, a guy working in an industry where maybe I was a minority, right? So I was taken aback, and you know, we met with HR, and I said, we need to diversify the gallery. It's important. We have great artists of color, but our staff doesn't look like the city that we're operating in. And we learned a lot along the way. And one thing we learned is that within the Black community, the art world is not yet a bona fide career path, right? So it is not that easy to get people. And then we also learned that we were not paying enough, right? For example, front desk positions we're underpaid, because usually you have kids from privileged backgrounds that want these jobs to have an entry, right? And you kind of don't think about it when you run a business. It's just sort of a fact. So we started changing that. That was easy. We changed the entry-level salaries. But I also realized that ultimately more needs to happen, right? And you know, you really have to do an outreach. And in comes Ebony, right? So Ebony, I talked to Ebony in January of last year about employment in the gallery, right? I thought, how interesting. She came recommended, and she's doing a great job. And we wanted to diversify the group of directors in the gallery, really the ones that are driving our business and making decisions. And then she came back and surprised me and said, David, how about this? how about you help me open my own gallery, and that gallery, you will support that gallery, and that gallery will only employ people of color. So we can create an environment where the career path is clear, but we're also doing an outreach to the community that has never happened before. And of course, we all know there are not enough Black-owned galleries. You know, when we looked at, for example, the Basel Art Fair, the Frieze Art Fair, I'm not sure that...
Maybe one?
One, right, exactly. So while I feel that the industry has done a good job in the curatorial realm, I think there's some great opportunities for curators, and certainly artists have now many opportunities in the art world. The working professionals are not there yet, and that's just starting to happen, and I hope we can do a bit to kind of equalize things.
So when will that gallery open?
So we are like this close to signing a lease. Hopefully it happens, the lease will be signed this month, and then we need to do a build out, and then we'll be ready. You know, I don't think you have to rush in this environment, you know. I think the logical time to open would be the fall.
Yeah, you got criticized for this a little bit too. Wasn't that kind of strange? That you're leaning into something that needs to happen.
You know, look, I think cancel culture, which, you know, we talked about earlier, is problematic, but also important. People's voices need to be heard. And I think every time you do something, you open yourself up for criticism, right? But I think it's better to do something than to be afraid to do something and then be criticized. So I think proof's in the pudding. If Ebony can create an interesting space with great opportunities for, you know, colleagues to learn the trade, and a great opportunity for artists, I think the critics will be quiet.
Well, you lead me into my last topic, which was the moment that we're in. You're saying trying to deal with, it's 1 year into COVID, and your timing issue about when to open that new space. You were sort of saying that. Where are we in this 1 year in? You know,
I think we're in home stretch. I think
rounding the corner, is that?
Definitely rounding the corner. I think it is a very unfortunate moment right now because people are so beaten down by what's been happening this last year. They don't really see the light at the end of the tunnel. I see that in my staff when we have staff meetings, that a lot of long faces. People have not left their home or their home environment. You know, their social life is atrophied and is boring. But the truth of the matter is, in this gallery today, I think I mentioned it to you earlier, clients walked in that we've known for years. They're older than 65, they're vaccinated, they're back, they want to look at art, they want to buy art. So that's a reality, that's happening, right? And
well, obviously they went first to the winner of the Fairfax Readers Poll for best gallery in the world. So that's why obviously they started here, because they must have read our poll and where should I go? Oh.
Well, that's sweet. I'm glad you mentioned that.
Note to all my other friends and colleagues, there's always next year.
There's always next year. In a very, very crappy year, that particular Fairfax announcement was definitely one of the absolute highlights. And you know, we always kind of, you end up on these lists and you never know how you got there and who votes, but to know that it's your peers and colleagues and friends and collectors voting, that meant a lot to me. So thanks for mentioning that. I think we'll see incredible improvements already in the spring. You know, I mean, remember how once the weather gets better, how much easier life is under COVID? And I think that most likely the vaccination will accelerate, it won't slow down. And I do feel really, really, really optimistic for the fall. But I think the future is bright. I really am. I'm an optimist, and I'm planning for it. I really want to be ready when the tide turns, and there's all this excitement in the air.
Well, Dave, thank you for being our first guest on Facts Check, one-on-one with the legendary David Zwirner.
Thank you, Josh. I'm on it.